I've only been 21 for a little while now, so I don't have my life completely figured out. But over the past few years, I've made mistakes that I wish I never made. I've missed opportunities because I cared too much about what other people thought. I've compared myself to people who seemed way ahead of me. I've learned what real friendships look like, and I've realized that adulthood hits a lot harder than anyone prepares for. Looking back, there are a handful of lessons that I genuinely wish someone had sat down with me and told me at 20. Would they have completely changed my life overnight? Probably not. But I honestly believe they would have saved me a lot of stress, a lot of wasted time, and a few decisions that I probably would have never made. So whether you're 16, 18, 20, or even in your 20s already, I think there's something in this video that'll help you. These are the things I wish I knew before I turned 20. The first thing I wish I knew before I turned 20 is that nobody really cares. And I mean that in the best way possible. At first, it sounds pretty depressing, but it's actually one of the most freeing things I've ever realized in my life personally. Most people aren't sitting around and thinking about your own life. They're worried about their own bills, their own relationships, careers, insecurities, and any problems they have. They don't have time or energy to judge every decision you make. Yet so many of us live like they do, and personally, I've dealt with this as well. Again, we don't start that YouTube channel because we're afraid people will laugh. We don't ask that person out because we're scared of rejection. We don't change majors, start a business, or chase the career we actually want because somebody might have something negative to say. But here's what I've learned. The people that criticize you are usually the most miserable people and the ones that are scared to take the risk themselves. It's easy to make fun of somebody who's trying. It's a lot harder to admit you're too scared to do it yourself, which is what these people are doing. So stop letting other people's opinions become the reason you're steering your life a different way. Whether it's the career you choose, the person you're going to date, whether you go to college, whether you start a business, whether you go into a trade, whether you want to create content, whether you want to start drop shipping or day trading, even though those are probably not the best options, whatever you believe, someone will always disagree with you. So don't live for others. If you try to make everyone happy, you'll end up making yourself miserable. And this is something I struggled with personally. When I was younger, I cared way too much about what other people thought. Looking back, I passed on opportunities, not because I didn't want them, but because I was worried about how they'd look to everyone else. One that always sticks with me is my first YouTube channel I started in high school. It was making real money, not enough to live off of yet, but it was growing every month. The views were going up, the income was going up, everything pointed towards it continuing to grow. But people kept telling me, you don't want to make $4,000 a month for the rest of your life. You're going to want to make more money at some point. Again, they meant well, and at the time it sounded logical. The problem was that they didn't understand that my YouTube channel was growing and it was only going upwards. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my own judgment a little bit more instead of assuming everyone else knew better. I don't live with regret over that decision because I think where I'm at today has put me into a better place, so maybe it worked out for the better. But I do think about it because it taught me how dangerous it is to let other people's opinions control what you do with your life. And I think that you watching this need to take that into consideration as well. And again, sometimes we focus on the negatives when it comes to talking about letting people control your lives, but sometimes there's positives too. People don't really care that much when you succeed either. Maybe your parents want you to become a doctor, and you become a doctor. They're proud, your friends congratulate you, and then life moves on. They're back to thinking about their own lives, the applause fades, the excitement fades. But you're still the one waking up every morning to live the life you chose, and being a doctor is not a bad thing, but if it's not the thing you want, then think twice about it. Again, that's why living for someone else's approval is such a dangerous game. Even if you get their approval, it won't last long. So if you're making big decisions, don't ask yourself what will everybody else think, but ask yourself, can you live with this decision, assuming it goes good or if it goes bad? Because again, you're going to be the one that's going to have to live with that consequence or that decision or whatever situation you're put in. Not your parents, not your friends, and not strangers on the internet. Now, that doesn't mean you ignore good advice. Community matters, mentors matter, your friends matter, your family matters, but there's a difference between listening to advice and handing someone else the pen to write your life. At the end of the day, you have to make your own choices. And that's the one thing I wish I understood before I turned 20. Build the life you want. Because if you spend your whole life trying to make everyone else happy, you're going to realize the only person living with your consequences is yourself, and you're only going to fail yourself. The next thing I wish I knew before I turned 20 is really how much your friends actually matter. Thankfully, this is one area where I got really lucky. I've always heard the saying, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. I think we've all heard that at some point in our lives, whether it's a motivational quote, what we learned in school, I don't know where that came from, but I heard it a lot and I'm sure you did too. I never really took it that seriously, but then I got older and I realized that it was right. During my late teenage years and into my early 20s, I went through some really difficult seasons. I felt almost lost at times. I doubted myself. There were moments where I really didn't know what direction I was going in life, but during that season, I met an incredible group of guys. These weren't just people that I hung out with, but they genuinely cared about me. They listened to my struggles, they cared to my needs a little bit. Again, I still had to figure out my own life, but they were still there for a good amount of it. And looking back, I honestly don't know where I'd be without them. That's why I don't think people realize how important good friendships really are. Again, your future spouse will probably become the most important relationship in your life if you do get married. But before that, your friends can be a really great support system, especially when you're transitioning out of your house. Life is hard enough. Don't try to do it all alone. Some of my friends will help me with practical things. Some help me with work. Some help me with bigger questions. Some people help me with my mental health. Some people help me with the practical things of teaching me how to grill or teaching me how to parallel park, right? Those friendships have changed my life more than I ever expected, but the opposite can be true as well, and that's something that we normally do talk about. The wrong friends can ruin your life, and I know that sounds cliche, but I've watched it happen. I've seen genuinely good people slowly become different because of who they surround themselves with. Someone in the group starts vaping, they all start vaping. Somebody starts drinking, they all start getting drunk. Somebody starts gambling, then everybody starts wasting their money. Nobody wakes up one day wanting to ruin their life. Most people just slowly become like that because it's the people that they spend their time with. Your environment is naturally going to become your normal life, your normal way of spending money, your normal way of treating people, right? And that's why your friendships matter so much, because they are your start to your environment. If your friends are lazy, that becomes normal. If they're always making excuses, you're probably going to start making excuses too. But if they're ambitious, disciplined, kind, that might start rubbing off on you too, and it might make you a better person. So again, don't just settle because you're lonely. Try to find friends who genuinely want the best for you and genuinely want the best for themselves, because you're just going to be in a better environment. Be with friends who try to celebrate your wins instead of competing with you, tell you the truth instead of what you want to hear, or even lie to you to make themselves feel better next to you. Because the people you spend the most time with won't just shape your 20s, they'll shape the man you're going to become in the future. The next thing I wish I knew before I turned 20 is this: nobody is coming to save you. Now, I don't mean that in a depressing way. I don't mean people don't love you, or that you can't ask for help, or that everybody hates you and the world's against you. I mean that eventually your life becomes your responsibility. When you're a kid, someone else carries the weight. Your parents will put food on the table, they'll pay for your clothes, and the bills will get paid, and if you run out of shampoo, there'll be shampoo there in the morning because your parents are going to go out and buy it. You don't think about any of that. Then one day you're going to move out on your own, and you're going to start college, or a job, or a trade, or a business, whatever it might be, and suddenly you're responsible for everything. You're paying for groceries, the bills, appointments, taxes, figuring out how to make your paycheck last, and wondering how your parents made it look so easy. Well, they made it look so easy because they had a lot of practice, and you're starting fresh. And I'll be honest, it can be very overwhelming. There are moments where I've looked around and been like, I don't know how to live life at all. Don't worry. Again, I've had those moments too, if you're having those moments as well. So whether it's learning how to figure out how to make more money, making good career decisions, relationship decisions, or just learning out how to be an adult, there are days where you wish someone would be there to tell you exactly how to do it. But again, that's just not how life is going to work. Eventually, you have to look at your situation and say, hey, this is my responsibility now. That's where you can really start growing. You can build your career, save money, but again, nobody's going to make you go to the gym. Nobody's going to make you study. Nobody's going to make difficult decisions for you that you've been avoiding. You have to choose to do those things on your own. Now, again, that doesn't mean you have to figure out everything on your own. You can have friends, you can have mentors, you can have pastors in your life. You can even go back to your parents a little bit. Again, learn from the people who've been where you're at. But don't expect everyone else to live your life for you. Even the people who love you the most have their own battles they have to fight. Again, they can support you, they can encourage you, they can help you, they can point you in the right direction, but they can't walk the path for you. And honestly, they shouldn't. Because one day you're going to look back at everything you've overcome and realize something. You're going to figure it out. You're going to have a hard semester. You're going to get fired from a job. You're going to get into a breakup. You're going to get into some bad money decisions, but you're going to live through it. You're going to learn and you're going to get better at it. And it's not going to be because somebody rescued you, but because you kept showing up when life got hard and you kept pushing through. That's where real confidence comes from. It's not built from an easy life or having everything figured out the moment you come across something. It comes from taking the first step, making the phone call, applying for the job, reading the book, and just starting today. Because nobody is coming to save you. And once you truly accept that, you realize something even better. You never needed someone else to help you in the first place. You're going to figure it out. Moving forward, another thing I wish I knew before I turned 20 is that the time is going to start moving really, really fast. When you're a kid, a year feels like forever. Summer break seems endless and your 20s feel like they're a lifetime away. But once you become an adult, something changes. The years start flying. I'm only 21 and I've already noticed how crazy time has moved. It honestly feels like I just graduated high school and now I'm talking about careers, building a future, getting engaged, and gonna have to pay my own bills and get a real job. People usually talk about the time when they're 40 watching their kids grow up and when they're 80 looking back on their entire lives. But the truth is, your life is moving just as fast when you're 20, even when you're younger too, but especially in your 20s. If you're in your late teens or early 20s, there's a good chance you've already lived a quarter of your life. Now, I'm not saying you need to have everything figured out. You definitely do not. But you do need to start moving. If you have a dream, start chasing it. If you want to start a business, start learning. If you want to be a content creator, make your first video. If you want to be an author, write your first page, right? Do all that stuff. If you want to get married someday, put yourself in situations where you're actually going to meet somebody instead of hoping magically they're going to show up at your front doorstep, because they're not. The world isn't going to slow down when you decide you're ready. Every day you wait is another day that passes. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy life. Go hang out with your friends still, watch a movie, play video games once in a while, have fun. Just don't let entertainment replace purpose. Too many people wake up one day wondering where the last 10 years went in their lives because all of them spent their time saying, hey, I'm going to start doing this tomorrow. Don't be that person. This goes back to the quote of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best day to plant that tree is today. Make progress now, even if it's small, because the time is going to keep moving whether you're moving with it or not. When you look back years from now, you'll be thankful that you started instead of wishing you had, which is going to be a lot of other people's situation. That being said, the fifth thing I wish I knew when I turned 20 is that comparison will kill your happiness. This is something I'm still working on today because it's incredibly hard not to compare yourself to other people. You see someone your age getting married at 19 and they look incredibly happy together, and it's hard to think, man, I wish I had that. I wish I had that love and that need to want to find commitment this early. You see a YouTuber playing video games for a living and making 6 figures. All they're doing is sitting down and playing video games, uploading it to YouTube. It's hard not to wonder why they made it while you're still trying to grow. You see classmates getting better grades than you, seeming to put in half of the effort. We've all been there, and I've compared myself too. I've watched people accomplish goals that I've wanted for years, have relationships that I've always wanted. I always wanted a girlfriend very, very badly, and it was only until recently until I had that. I understand that, but here's what I've realized. You never get the full picture of someone else's life. You might see somebody driving a Lamborghini on Instagram, but you don't know if they're drowning in debt to afford it. You might see someone constantly smiling on social media, but you don't know if they're battling anxiety, depression, or loneliness behind the screen. You see the happy couple posting vacation pictures, but you don't see the arguments, the struggles, or the challenges they deal with when the camera is off. Especially with social media, you're comparing your everyday life to someone else's highlight reel. Of course, you're going to feel like you're falling behind when everybody else is doing so great. Nobody posts the nights they cried themselves to sleep. Nobody posts the rejected job application. Nobody posts the failed business, the financial stress, the debt mountain they're in, or the moments they question everything. You're seeing the best 1% of someone's life and comparing it to the 100% of yours. That's not a fair comparison. You'd have to be literally Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or somebody incredible to beat that. And even then, you're probably still going to lose. Instead of constantly looking at what everyone else has, spend more time appreciating what you already have. There are things in your life right now that someone else would kill to have, that they would love to have. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have ambition. It's okay to want more. It's okay to dream bigger. It's okay to look at someone successful and think, hey, I want to build my life in a way to be where they're at their life right now. The difference is using it as motivation, not a reason to hate your own life. Let others people's success inspire you instead of discouraging you. Look at other people and appreciate what they have and not hate what they have. Learn from them. Figure out what they're doing well. Work hard towards your own goals, but don't spend your life wishing you were someone else. Because if you're always comparing yourself to people who seem to have more than you, you're never going to be satisfied with what you have, even when that one day comes and you have what they have. Again, be grateful for where you are. Keep moving towards somewhere you want to go, and remember that everyone is fighting battles you can't see. Focusing on your own race, not someone else's, is the best way to go. That's where real happiness is going to come from. That being said, if you're working on becoming a better man and figuring out the things that I talked about in this video, one of the questions you're probably going to eventually ask is, how do I find the right person to marry, date, and how do I just find a good girl in general? I made an entire video breaking down exactly where to meet great women, what qualities to look for, and how to build a healthy relationship from the start. So click this video on your screen right here, and I'll see you over there.